The sky hung heavy over Oak Ridge that October afternoon, casting long shadows across the empty streets. 10-year-old Sarah Thompson hugged her backpack closer as she cut through the alley behind Maple Street, taking her usual shortcut home. A gust of wind sent dead leaves skittering across her path when she heard a weak, rattling cough that stopped her mid-step. Sarah peered through a gap in the fence and froze. There, in the mud-caked yard, lay what had once been a proud German shepherd, its ribs pressed against dull, patchy fur. A heavy chain ran from a spike to a too-tight collar. The dog raised its head slightly, amber eyes clouded but somehow dignified despite everything. What caught Sarah's attention, though, was the glint of metal hanging from the collar military tags, unmistakable to a military child like herself. "Oh, my God," she whispered, her phone already in her trembling hand. What Sarah couldn't know was that her discovery would not only save a forgotten hero, but would divide an entire town and put her family in danger. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Along with the city you're watching from now, let's continue with the story. The small town of Oak Ridge, Wisconsin, prided itself on two things: its picturesque downtown straight from a Norman Rockwell painting and its patriotism. American flags adorned most storefronts year-round, and the annual Veterans Day Parade drew crowds from 3 counties over. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. Max had arrived in Oak Ridge without fanfare 2 years earlier. At 10 years old, the German shepherd carried the dignified bearing of his military training despite his advancing age. His service record read like a hero's tale: 8 years, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, specialized in explosive detection and search and rescue. Max had saved countless lives, including a unit pinned down during an ambush in Kandahar province. The military had awarded him medals that now hung tarnished beside his tags. Sarah Thompson had her father's eyes, clear blue and observant, and her mother's determination. At 10 years old, she carried a grief too heavy for her small shoulders. Captain William Thompson had never returned from his final deployment 3 years ago. Sarah kept his dog tags under her pillow and wore his watch, sized down to fit her wrist, every day to school. Catherine Thompson had rebuilt a life for herself and Sarah with quiet dignity. Working as a veterinary nurse at Oak Ridge Animal Hospital gave structure to her days, and volunteering at the local animal rescue filled her nights when memories of William kept sleep at bay. Their modest 2-bedroom house at the edge of town held equal measures of happiness and sorrow. Robert Mitchell lived alone in the gray ranch house on Maple Street. Neighbors described him as standoffish on good days, downright hostile on bad ones. Few knew he had served. Fewer still knew about his brother Marcus, Max's original handler, who had died in the same ambush that had claimed William Thompson. The Mitchell brothers had grown up in Oak Ridge before enlisting, but the town barely recognized the hollow-eyed man who returned alone. Sheriff Michael Williams had known them all since childhood. He'd gone to high school with the Mitchell boys, had been best man at William and Catherine's wedding. Now he served the town with a pragmatic fairness that sometimes satisfied no one. He believed in the law, in property rights, in proper channels. No one in Oak Ridge could have predicted how these lives would collide or what would happen when they did. Sarah couldn't get the image of the chained dog out of her mind during math class. Mrs. Winters droned on about fractions, while Sarah's pencil sketched the German shepherd's sad eyes in her notebook margin. When the final bell rang, she made a decision that would change everything. "I'm taking the shortcut today," she told her best friend Lily at the school gates. "Again, my mom says those alleys aren't safe," Lily replied, adjusting her unicorn backpack. "I'll be fine. See you tomorrow," Sarah called over her shoulder, already jogging toward Maple Street. The October air carried the first bite of winter as Sarah approached the gap in the fence she'd discovered the day before. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she peered through. The German Shepherd lay in the same spot, his water bowl tipped over and empty. His food dish, if you could call it that, held what looked like stale bread crusts. Sarah glanced around to ensure no one was watching, then slipped her backpack off her shoulders. From inside, she pulled out her lunch's untouched turkey sandwich and a bottle of water. She hesitated only briefly before squeezing through the gap in the fence. "Hey there," she whispered, approaching slowly with her palm out as she'd learned at her mother's clinic. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dog's ears twitched forward, but he made no move to stand. As Sarah drew closer, she could see his condition was even worse than she'd thought. Patches of fur were missing, revealing irritated skin beneath. His paws were cracked and bleeding. Most disturbing was the collar fitted when he was healthier, now digging into his neck as he'd lost weight. "You poor thing," Sarah murmured, kneeling a safe distance away. She unwrapped the sandwich and placed half of it within his reach. The dog sniffed once, then devoured it with a desperation that made Sarah's eyes sting with tears. While he ate, Sarah carefully poured water into his overturned bowl. She noticed the tags hanging from his collar and leaned closer to read them. The first was standard military issue, Max, Service Number K9 7724, Blood Type DEA 1.1, positive. The second was a medal, an actual bronze star, with a V for valor. "You're a hero," she whispered. Max looked up at her words, his cloudy eyes somehow more alert. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for her phone. She needed evidence. Her mother had taught her that documentation was crucial in animal welfare cases. For 3 days, Sarah followed the same routine. School, shortcut. Visit Max with food and water. Document his condition. Head home. On the 4th day, Max managed to stand when she approached, his tail offering a single weak wag. "Mom," Sarah said that evening as Catherine chopped vegetables for dinner, "I need to show you something." Catherine wiped her hands on a dish towel and looked at her daughter with concern. "What is it, honey?" Sarah pulled up the photos and videos on her phone, then handed it to her mother. "His name is Max. He's a military dog, and someone's hurting him." Catherine's face darkened as she flipped through the images. 20 years of veterinary work had hardened her to many things, but this made her stomach turn. "Where is he who owns him?" "The gray house on Maple. Mr. Mitchell's place." Catherine's knife clattered to the cutting board. "Robert Mitchell." "Sarah, you've been going onto his property. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" "But, Mom, Max is dying. He has medals. He served our country just like Dad." Sarah's voice broke on the last word. Catherine closed her eyes briefly, her hand automatically reaching for the wedding ring she still wore on a chain around her neck. "Sarah, there are proper channels for these things. We can call animal control. They'll take forever. You always say the first 24 hours are critical in abuse cases." "Please, Mom, Dad would have helped him." The mention of William hung in the air between them. Catherine looked again at the photos at the military tags, at the once proud animal reduced to skin and bones. "Your father would have kicked down the door," Catherine said softly, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. Then she straightened her shoulders. "We'll do this the right way. I'll call Dr. Anderson to meet us there tomorrow. But Sarah," her voice grew stern, "you will not go near that house again alone. Robert Mitchell has issues. Promise me." "I promise," Sarah said quickly, relief flooding through her. The next afternoon, Catherine picked Sarah up from school in the clinic van. Dr. James Anderson, a man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes, sat in the passenger seat. He'd been William's family doctor before becoming the town's most respected veterinarian. "So, you're the young lady who found our soldier," he said, smiling at Sarah in the rearview mirror. "That was brave of you." "I just did what anyone would do," Sarah replied, though all three knew that wasn't true. Most people walked past, suffering rather than toward it. Catherine parked a few houses down from Mitchell's property. "Let me do the talking," she instructed as they walked up the cracked concrete path to Mitchell's front door. "James, I want your professional assessment documented. Sarah, stay behind me." Catherine knocked firmly. Seconds stretched into a minute. She knocked again, louder. The door swung open abruptly. Robert Mitchell filled the doorframe, tall, unshaven. The sleeves of his flannel shirt rolled up to reveal tattooed forearms. His eyes, bloodshot and suspicious, narrowed at the sight of them. "Whatever you're selling, I don't want any," he growled, already moving to close the door. Catherine placed her palm against the door. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Catherine Thompson from Oak Ridge Animal Hospital. We've received a report about a dog on your property that appears to be in distress. We'd like to offer our assistance." Mitchell's face hardened. "That's my dog, my property, and none of your damn business." "Sir." Dr. Anderson stepped forward. "As a veterinarian, I'm obligated to investigate claims of animal suffering. We're not here to cause trouble." "That's so." Mitchell's gaze shifted, landing on Sarah half hidden behind her mother. "And I suppose you had nothing to do with this? Little girl been trespassing. Have you—" Sarah felt her mother's arm move protectively in front of her. "Mr. Mitchell." Catherine's voice remained professional, though Sarah could feel her tension. "We're simply concerned about the animal's welfare. May we see him?" A muscle twitched in Mitchell's jaw. "Show me a warrant or get off my property." From the backyard came a weak bark. Max, somehow sensing their presence. "Please," Sarah said suddenly, stepping out from behind her mother. "His name is Max, isn't it? He served in the military. He's a hero." Something flickered in Mitchell's eyes. Pain, recognition, anger too fast to interpret. "5 minutes," he said finally. "Then you leave and don't come back." Robert Mitchell led them around the side of the house, his gait stiff and unwelcoming. The backyard was worse than Sarah's photos had captured, overgrown with weeds, littered with rusting car parts and empty bottles. In the far corner, Max raised his head at their approach. His tail gave a feeble thump against the mud-packed ground. "Doctor—" Anderson moved forward immediately, his professional demeanor giving way to barely concealed anger. "My God," he muttered, kneeling beside the German shepherd. Max allowed the examination with the patience of a dog accustomed to being handled. though he winced when the veterinarian touched certain areas. "This animal is severely malnourished and dehydrated," Dr. Anderson said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of veterinary authority. "He has multiple infections, muscle atrophy, and what appears to be untreated heartworm. His temperature is dangerously low." He looked up at Mitchell, no longer bothering to mask his disgust. "This dog needs immediate medical attention." Mitchell crossed his arms defensively. "He's fine. Just getting old." "Old?" Catherine stepped forward, unable to contain herself. "This isn't old age, Mr. Mitchell. This is neglect, bordering on cruelty." "You don't know anything about it," Mitchell snapped. "He's my responsibility. My brother's dog." Sarah, who had been quietly stroking Max's head, looked up sharply. "Your brother?" Something darkened in Mitchell's expression. "Marcus. He was Max's handler in Afghanistan. 8 years they served together." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. 8 years until the military used them up and spat them out. Dr. Anderson continued his examination, documenting each finding with his phone's camera. "Did the military retire him to you as the handler's next of kin?" "Damn right they did. Like some kind of consolation prize." Mitchell's laugh held no humor. "Sorry your brother got blown to pieces. Here's his dog." As if that made everything better. Catherine's expression softened slightly, professional compassion warring with her anger. "Mr. Mitchell, I understand you're dealing with a difficult loss, but you understand nothing." Mitchell cut her off. "Your 5 minutes are up. Get off my property." "We can't leave him like this," Sarah protested, her small hand protectively covering one of Max's ears as if to shield him from the harsh words. "Sir." Dr. Anderson stood, brushing dirt from his knees. "As a veterinary professional, I am obligated to report this level of neglect to animal control. This dog requires immediate medical intervention." Mitchell's face flushed dark with anger. "That dog is my property. You take him. I'll have you arrested for theft." The confrontation was interrupted by the sound of tires on gravel. A police cruiser pulled up alongside the house, and Sheriff Michael Williams stepped out, adjusting his hat as he approached the group. "Afternoon, folks," he said, his weathered face betraying nothing. "Got a call about a disturbance?" "Michael?" Catherine nodded tersely. "We're conducting a welfare check on this animal." The sheriff's eyes flickered to Max, then back to the group. "On private property without permission?" "I gave them 5 minutes." Mitchell said, "Time's up, and now they're threatening to steal my dog." "Not steal," Dr. Anderson interjected. "Remove for medical treatment. Sheriff, this animal is in critical condition. As a veterinarian, I'm mandated to report such cases." Sheriff Williams surveyed the scene with practiced neutrality. "Robert, this dog does look in rough shape. He's mine. Mike, my brother's dog." Mitchell's voice carried a dangerous edge. "You know the law. They can't just take him." The sheriff sighed, removing his hat to run a hand through his thinning hair. "He's right about that. Property laws are clear. You'd need a court order to remove the animal without consent." "By then it could be too late," Dr. Anderson argued. Catherine placed a restraining hand on the veterinarian's arm. "What if Mr. Mitchell agrees to bring Max to the clinic himself? We could begin treatment immediately, at no cost." She directed this last part at Mitchell, whose scowl only deepened. "I don't need your charity." "It's not charity," Catherine countered. "It's what's right. What's honorable for a military service animal." Mitchell's jaw tightened. "Don't talk to me about honor. Where was honor when they sent my brother into that valley with faulty intelligence? Where was honor when they shipped his dog home with a pat on the head and a handful of medals?" Sarah, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "My dad died in Afghanistan, too." Her clear voice cut through the tension. "He was a captain, William Thompson." Mitchell's eyes widened slightly, truly looking at Catherine for the first time. "Thompson," he repeated slowly. "You're Will's widow." Catherine nodded, her hand unconsciously rising to touch the ring beneath her blouse. "I remember you from the funeral," Mitchell said, his voice losing some of its edge. "Marcus spoke highly of your husband, called him a good officer." A heavy silence fell over the group. Sarah, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, pressed forward gently. "Mr. Mitchell, my dad always said that soldiers look out for each other. Max is a soldier too, isn't he?" Before Mitchell could respond, Sheriff Williams cleared his throat. "Here's what's going to happen. Dr. Anderson, you'll file your report with my office, not animal control. Robert, you've got 48 hours to get this dog proper veterinary care at the clinic or elsewhere. Your choice. I'll be back to check." He leveled a firm look at Mitchell. "Don't make me come back with a court order." "This is bullshit," Mitchell muttered. But the fight seemed to drain from him. "Fine, I'll bring him in tomorrow." Catherine nodded, relief washing over her face. "Thank you. We open at 8. As they turned to leave, Sarah knelt once more beside Max. "We'll see you tomorrow, boy," she whispered, giving him a final gentle pat. "I promise." The walk back to the van was silent, tension vibrating in the air between them. Once inside, "Doctor," Anderson exploded. 48 hours. That dog might not last 24 in that condition." "James, I know." Catherine started, but was interrupted by Sarah. "He won't bring him in," the girl said quietly from the back seat. "He's lying." Catherine met her daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. "How do you know that?" "Honey." "Because he's ashamed," Sarah said with the simple clarity of a child. "And ashamed people don't ask for help." During the drive home, Sarah remained unusually quiet, her thumbs moving rapidly over her phone screen. Catherine, focused on the road and processing the confrontation, didn't notice until they were nearly home. "Who are you texting?" "Sarah?" "No one." Sarah answered too quickly, sliding her phone into her pocket. "Just looking at pictures of Max." Later that evening, as Catherine prepared dinner, her phone began buzzing incessantly with notifications. Wiping her hands, she checked the screen, her eyes widening in shock. "Sarah Elizabeth Thompson," she called, striding into the living room where her daughter sat, watching TV. "What have you done?" Sarah looked up, a mixture of defiance and uncertainty on her face. "What do you mean?" Catherine thrust her phone toward her daughter. On the screen was a social media post that had already been shared hundreds of times, Sarah's video of Max, chained and suffering, alongside a photo of him in military gear with his handler. The caption read, "This is Max, a decorated military hero who saved American lives in Afghanistan. This is how he lives now in Oak Ridge, Wisconsin. This is how we treat our veterans. Save Max, veteran abuse. I had to do something, Sarah said, her voice small but determined. No one was moving fast enough. Sarah, do you have any idea what you've done? Catherine ran a hand through her hair, scrolling through the comments, rapidly filling the post. This is going to explode. And explode it did. By morning. The post had been shared thousands of times. Local news stations were calling. Veterans groups from 3 states were demanding action. The Oak Ridge Community Facebook page had erupted into heated debate. Catherine's phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Sheriff Williams, his voice tense. Catherine, are you behind this social media campaign? Not directly, she answered carefully. My daughter was concerned about the dog. Well, your daughter's concern has my office fielding calls from all over the country. Robert Mitchell has received death threats. So have you. By the way, from people who think you're violating his property rights. The sheriff sounded exhausted. This has gotten out of hand. What does this mean for Max? Catherine asked, cutting to her primary concern. It means I've got a judge reviewing the case this morning for an emergency removal order. And it means you and Sarah need to watch your backs. Not everyone in town thinks you're heroes for this. After hanging up, Catherine sat heavily at the kitchen table. The morning news played quietly on the small TV in the corner, where a reporter now stood in front of Mitchell's house. Mom. Sarah appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. Is everything okay? Catherine beckoned her daughter over, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. You've started something big, sweetheart. I'm not sure if it's good or bad yet, but it's definitely big. Sarah leaned into her mother's embrace. I just wanted to help Max. I know. Catherine kissed the top of her head. And we will. But this situation just got a lot more complicated. On the TV, the camera panned to show a small group of protesters already gathering at the end of Mitchell's driveway, carrying hastily made signs reading "Justice for Max" and "Support our K-9 veterans." Behind them, barely visible through the curtains of his front window, stood the dark silhouette of Robert Mitchell, watching. The Oak Ridge Diner had stood on Main Street since 1952, its chrome fixtures and red vinyl booths unchanged by time or trend. This morning, however, the usual peaceful breakfast crowd had transformed into something closer to a town hall meeting. Every booth was filled, the counter stools occupied by locals leaning toward one another in heated discussion. Property rights are property rights. Frank Miller, who owned the hardware store 3 doors down, stabbed a fork into his eggs for emphasis. If we start letting people take your dog, what's next? Your car, your house. That's ridiculous. Frank, Eleanor Winters, the 5th grade teacher, countered from the next booth. We're talking about a living creature being abused. A military hero, no less. Since when does a dog outrank human rights? Another voice chimed in. Catherine slipped into the diner, keeping her head down as she made her way to the counter. She'd dropped Sarah at school after much protest and needed coffee before heading to the clinic. The conversations hushed momentarily as people recognized her, then resumed with increased intensity. Doris, who had been serving coffee at the diner for 30 years, slid a mug toward Catherine without being asked. "Quite the storm you've stirred up," she said, not unkindly. "Not intentionally," Catherine replied, wrapping her fingers around the warm mug gratefully. "Intentional or not, this town needed something to wake it up." Doris topped off the coffee. "How's that poor animal doing?" "I don't know. Mitchell hasn't brought him in." Catherine checked her watch. "The clinic's been open for an hour." The diner's bell jingled as Sheriff Williams entered, his uniform crisp despite the dark circles under his eyes suggesting a sleepless night. The room quieted again as he approached Catherine. "Morning, Doris. Coffee, black," he said, settling onto the stool beside Catherine. Once Doris moved away, he lowered his voice. "Judge Harmon has agreed to review the case this afternoon if he grants the order. We can remove the dog legally." Catherine nodded. "Thank you, Michael." "Don't thank me yet." The sheriff rubbed his temples. "The situation at Mitchell's place is getting tense. We've got protesters on one side of the street, counter-protesters on the other. I've had to assign 2 deputies just to keep them separated." "Counter-protesters?" Catherine frowned. "Oh, yes. Defend Our Veterans group showed up around dawn. They're saying Mitchell's being persecuted because he's a traumatized vet." The sheriff shook his head. "This isn't just about a dog anymore. Catherine, it's become something bigger." Catherine's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Anderson. "Still no sign of Mitchell or Max. Preparing emergency treatment area just in case." Outside the diner window, a news van from the Milwaukee station rolled slowly down Main Street. "Perfect," Sheriff Williams muttered. "Just what we need." By noon, Oak Ridge had transformed from a quiet town to the center of a media circus. Catherine received 3 interview requests while treating a golden retriever with an ear infection. She declined them all, focusing instead on preparing the clinic for Max's potential arrival. Sarah texted during her lunch break. "Everyone at school is talking about Max. Mrs. Winters showed us my video in class. When can we bring him home?" Catherine stared at the message. Bring him home. She hadn't considered that possibility. Their small house barely had room for the 2 of them, let alone a large German shepherd with complex medical needs. And yet, as soon as the thought entered her mind, she could picture it Max recovering on their living room rug, Sarah reading beside him, the empty space in their home finally filled with something other than grief. "One step at a time," she texted back. "Focus on school, sweetie." At 2:00, Dr. Anderson called her into his office. On his computer screen was a military website with Max's service record, or at least the unclassified portions. "I reached out to a buddy at the Pentagon," he explained. "Wanted to understand what we're dealing with. Catherine, this dog is remarkable." Together they read through Max's history. Trained at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. Deployed first to Iraq in 2012, then multiple tours in Afghanistan. Specialized in explosive detection, saving countless lives by discovering IEDs before they could be triggered. Awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal in 2017 for his actions during an ambush. Here's the most interesting part. Dr. Anderson pointed to a section titled Handler History. Max had the same handler for almost his entire career, Staff Sergeant Marcus Mitchell. They were considered one of the most effective canine teams in theater. Catherine's eyes caught on a note further down. Handler KIA during operation in Kandahar Province. April 2020. K9. Max injured in same engagement. Recommended for medical retirement following recovery. That was 2 years ago, Catherine murmured. Mitchell's had him since then. According to this, Max received excellent medical care from the military before his retirement. All his shots, heartworm prevention, even dental work. Dr. Anderson shook his head, which means his current condition represents a severe decline in just 2 years. The clinic's front door chimed, and Melissa, their receptionist, appeared in the doorway. Dr. Thompson, there's someone here to see you. In the waiting room stood a tall man in his 50s wearing a VFW cap. He introduced himself as Colonel James Reeves, retired. I drove up from Madison after seeing the story, he explained. I worked with military working dogs for 15 years. Thought I might be able to help. Catherine led him to the break room, where he spread out several folders on the table. K9 Max was exceptional, Colonel Reeves said, opening the first folder to reveal photographs of a healthier, proud-looking Max in a tactical vest. His detection rate was nearly perfect. He and Staff Sergeant Mitchell were requested by name for high-risk missions. What happens when a military dog retires? Catherine asked. Standard protocol is to offer the dog to the handler first. If that's not possible, we look at handler's family, then other military or law enforcement agencies. Civilian adoption is the last option. Colonel Reeves frowned. The transition can be difficult. These dogs go from highly structured environments with constant stimulation to suburban living. Without proper support, problems develop. And was proper support provided to Robert Mitchell? Colonel Reeves's expression darkened. That's what I'm trying to determine. According to these records, the military offered transition resources trainer consultations, veterinary care, even a stipend for food and medicine, but it appears none of these were utilized. Catherine thought about Mitchell's anger, his comment about Max being a consolation prize. Something wasn't adding up. There's one more thing, Colonel Reeves said, pulling out a final document. Staff Sergeant Mitchell left a will. Military personnel typically complete one before each deployment. In it, he specified that if anything happened to him, Max should go to the Thompson family of Oak Ridge, Wisconsin. Catherine's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the clinic floor. What did you say? The will specifically names your family. Did you know about this? Catherine shook her head, stunned. No. We knew the Mitchell brothers, Robert and Marcus. My husband served with them, but I had no idea Marcus wanted us to take Max. Colonel Reeves frowned. Then something went very wrong with the retirement process. Robert Mitchell should never have received custody of Max if there was a specific alternate caretaker named. The clinic phone rang, and Melissa rushed in. Dr. Thompson, it's the sheriff. He says it's urgent. Catherine grabbed the phone. Michael, what's happening? Judge granted the emergency order. I'm heading to Mitchell's place now. His voice was tight with tension. But there's a problem. Someone leaked the news to the protesters. The situation's escalating. I need you to stay at the clinic until I call again. I'll be ready, Catherine assured him, her mind racing. We have everything prepared for Max. After hanging up, she turned to Colonel Reeves. "Can you stay? Your expertise would be invaluable if, when Max arrives." "Of course." The colonel nodded. "I'll help however I can." Catherine called the school next, asking them to keep Sarah there until she could pick her up personally. The secretary's voice was sympathetic but concerned. "You should know, Dr. Thompson. Sarah's been receiving some troubling notes in her locker. Nothing explicitly threatening, but uncomfortable. We're monitoring the situation." A cold knot formed in Catherine's stomach. "What kind of notes?" "Things like, 'Mind your own business and your mom is destroying our town.' Children parroting what they hear at home. I suspect." Catherine thanked her and hung up. Anger mingling with her worry. She hadn't considered how the controversy might affect Sarah at school. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Catherine checked her phone every few minutes, expecting Sheriff Williams's call. At 3:30, her phone finally rang, but it wasn't the sheriff. "Mrs. Thompson," a female voice, unfamiliar and breathless. "This is Amanda Wilson. My son goes to school with Sarah. I just picked them up and—" Her voice caught. "And Sarah wasn't there. The teachers thought she left with another parent. But none of the other parents have her." Catherine's world tilted sideways. "What do you mean? Sarah wasn't there? I specifically asked them to keep her until I arrived." "I know. They told me. But apparently she told her teacher you'd texted saying Mr. Anderson was picking her up instead. The school tried calling you to confirm, but couldn't reach you." Catherine checked her phone, 3 missed calls from the school during a period when she'd been helping with an emergency surgery. "I never sent that text," Catherine said, her voice hollow with dawning horror. "Mrs. Thompson, there's something else. My son Jason said Sarah was talking all day about going to see the dog again. She was convinced something bad was going to happen." Catherine hung up and immediately dialed Sheriff Williams, who didn't answer. Next, she called Robert Mitchell's number, which she'd gotten from his file at the clinic. It rang several times before going to voicemail. "Dr. Anderson," Catherine called, grabbing her coat. "I have to go. Sarah's missing, and I think she went to Mitchell's." "I'll come with you," the veterinarian said immediately. "No, someone needs to be here when the sheriff brings Max." Catherine was already halfway out the door. "Colonel Reeves can help you." The drive to Maple Street took 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours. As Catherine approached, she could see the situation had deteriorated significantly. At least 30 protesters lined each side of the street, their signs and chants creating a cacophony of noise. 2 police cruisers blocked the driveway to Mitchell's house, and an animal control van waited nearby. Catherine parked haphazardly and rushed toward the police line, flashing her ID at a young deputy who tried to stop her. "I'm Catherine Thompson. My daughter is missing, and I think she's here." The deputy's eyes widened in recognition. "Dr. Thompson, you can't go in there right now. The sheriff is attempting to execute the court order, but Mitchell has barricaded himself inside. My 10-year-old daughter may be in that house." Catherine's voice rose with panic. The deputy spoke rapidly into his radio, relaying the information. After a moment, Sheriff Williams' voice crackled back, "Let her through. Bring her to me." Catherine was escorted past the barricades to where the sheriff stood on Mitchell's front lawn, megaphone in hand. "Catherine," his face was grim, "are you certain Sarah might be here?" She disappeared from school. Told them I'd arranged a pickup I never authorized. She's been obsessed with saving Max." Catherine fought to keep her voice steady. "Michael, if she's in there with him—" The sheriff turned to the house, raising the megaphone again. "Robert, we have reason to believe Sarah Thompson may be inside with you. Her mother is here and very concerned. Please confirm whether the child is with you." For a long moment there was no response. Then the front curtain moved slightly. A piece of paper appeared in the window, held by an unseen hand. Written in large black letters were the words, "She's safe. Go away." Catherine's knees nearly buckled. "She's in there," she whispered. "Oh, God, Sarah's in there." Sheriff Williams put a steadying hand on her arm. "This changes everything. I'm calling in the crisis negotiation team from Madison." "That will take hours," Catherine protested. "We can't risk escalating this with a child involved," the sheriff said firmly. "Robert is unstable, but he's not violent by nature. We need to de-escalate." Catherine stared at the house, imagining her daughter inside with a mentally unstable man and a dying dog. What had Sarah been thinking? Then, with sudden clarity, she understood. "Let me talk to him," she said. "Absolutely not." Sheriff Williams shook his head. "Michael, listen to me. This isn't about the dog anymore, or property rights, or even the law. This is about Marcus Mitchell's last wishes." Catherine explained what Colonel Reeves had told her about the will. "Robert was never supposed to have Max in the first place. Marcus wanted him with us." The sheriff considered this new information. "You think that might get through to him?" "I think it might be our only chance." Catherine looked toward the house again. "He's not a monster, Michael. He's a grieving brother who's been carrying a burden he was never meant to bear." After a moment's hesitation, Sheriff Williams nodded. "No closer than the front steps. Deputies will be right behind you. First sign of trouble, you back away immediately." Catherine approached the house slowly, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. The street had gone eerily quiet, protesters on both sides watching in tense silence. At the front steps, Catherine took a deep breath and called out, "Robert, it's Catherine Thompson. I'd like to talk to you. Just talk. No police, no courts. Just two people who both loved Marcus in different ways." For several long moments, there was no response. Then the front door opened a crack, though no one was visible behind it. "Sarah," Catherine called, her voice breaking slightly. "Honey, are you okay?" "I'm fine. Mom." Sarah's voice came from somewhere inside, sounding remarkably calm. "Mr. Mitchell didn't know I was coming. I snuck in through the back door to help Max, and then the police arrived." "Jesus, kid." Mitchell's voice was audible now, further inside the house. "You're going to get me shot by the cops." "No one's going to shoot anyone," Catherine said firmly. "Robert, I've just learned something important. Something about Marcus's wishes for Max." A shadow moved behind the door. "What are you talking about? Marcus left a will. He wanted Max to come to us, to the Thompson family, if anything happened to him." Catherine's voice softened. "He trusted us to care for Max. Did you know that—" The door opened wider, revealing Robert Mitchell's haggard face. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hair disheveled. "You're lying," he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Colonel James Reeves is at my clinic right now with the paperwork. Marcus specified it clearly. Catherine took a cautious step closer. Robert, you were never meant to carry this burden alone. Something in Mitchell's expression crumbled. They gave him to me. Said I was next of kin. There was a mistake in the process. A terrible mistake that has hurt both you and Max. Catherine extended her hand. Please, let us help. Let us honor what Marcus wanted. Behind Mitchell, Sarah appeared in the hallway. Her face streaked with tears, but determined. Beside her, barely able to stand, was Max. The German shepherd leaned heavily against the girl's leg, his once proud head hanging low. Mom, Sarah called, her voice trembling. Max is really sick. We need to get him to the clinic right now. The sight of her daughter safe, scared but unharmed, nearly undid Catherine's careful composure. But the professional in her immediately assessed Max's condition from across the threshold. The dog was in critical distress, his breathing labored, his gums likely pale beneath his graying muzzle. Robert, Catherine said with gentle urgency, Max is dying right now, in this moment. Whatever happens with custody, with courts, with protesters, none of that matters if he doesn't survive the next few hours. Please let us take him for treatment. For Marcus. Mitchell looked down at the dog who had been his brother's closest companion through war and peace. His shoulders sagged in defeat. Marcus always said your husband was the best officer he ever served under, he said quietly. He trusted the Thompsons. His voice broke on the next words. I just wanted something of my brother to survive. I know, Catherine said softly. And he will survive. Through Max, if you let us help him now. Mitchell stepped back from the door. Take him, he said, his voice hollow. Just take good care of him. Catherine signaled to the sheriff, who approached cautiously with 2 deputies. Medical emergency, she called. We need to transport Max to the clinic immediately. As the animal control officers brought in a stretcher, Catherine finally rushed forward to embrace her daughter, holding her tightly. What were you thinking? She whispered fiercely into Sarah's hair. You could have been hurt. I had to do something, Sarah whispered back. The weather report said a big storm is coming tonight. Max couldn't stay out in that. Catherine pulled back, cupping her daughter's face. Never again, Sarah, promise me. Sarah nodded solemnly, then turned to watch as the officers carefully lifted Max onto the stretcher. The once powerful military dog looked small and fragile. Robert Mitchell stood silently in his hallway, watching as the last connection to his brother was carried away. In that moment, Catherine made a decision that would change all their lives. Robert, she said, would you like to come with us to the clinic? Max shouldn't be alone right now, and neither should you. The animal hospital's emergency entrance burst open as the team rushed Max inside on the stretcher. Dr. Anderson was waiting, his experienced hands immediately checking vital signs, while Colonel Reeves hovered nearby, his military bearing at odds with the worry etched on his face. Temperature 104.3, heart rate elevated, severe dehydration. Dr. Anderson called out to the waiting technicians. I need a catheter in, lactated ringers wide open, blood draw for complete panel, chest radiographs, and abdominal ultrasound. Catherine switched seamlessly into professional mode, directing staff and preparing medications while keeping a watchful eye on Sarah, who stood pressed against the wall, her face pale. Robert Mitchell remained in the doorway, seemingly unsure of his place in the unfolding drama. "Sarah, take Mr. Mitchell to the waiting room," Catherine instructed gently. "This will take some time." "I want to stay with Max," Sarah protested. "Sarah, honey, we need space to work," Catherine explained. "The best thing you can do for Max right now is wait patiently." Reluctantly, Sarah took Mitchell's hand, a gesture that seemed to surprise him as much as it did Catherine, and led him to the waiting area. Through the glass partition, Catherine could see them sitting side by side. An unlikely pair, united by their concern for the German shepherd fighting for his life on the treatment table. The next hour passed in a blur of medical procedures. Max's condition was even worse than they had feared. Years of neglect had taken a devastating toll on the once powerful military dog. "Multiple organ involvement," Dr. Anderson murmured grimly as he reviewed the blood work. "Kidneys struggling, liver values off the charts, severe anemia, advanced heartworm disease." "Can he recover?" Catherine asked, preparing another syringe of medications. The older veterinarian's eyes met hers over his surgical mask. "It's going to be touch and go, Catherine, even with aggressive treatment. The prognosis is guarded at best." Colonel Reeves stepped forward, having silently observed the medical team's efforts. "I've seen military dogs recover from seemingly impossible situations," he said firmly. "Max is a fighter. He survived 3 tours in the most dangerous regions of Afghanistan. It's not just his physical condition," Dr. Anderson explained. "Long-term neglect causes psychological damage, too. He may have simply lost the will to fight." As if hearing them, Max lifted his head slightly from the treatment table, his cloudy eyes searching the room. Despite his weakness, his ears pricked forward at the sound of the front door chime. Sheriff Williams entered the treatment area, removing his hat respectfully. "How's he doing?" "Critical but stable for now," Catherine replied, adjusting an IV line. "We're doing everything we can." The sheriff nodded solemnly. "I've got some news you should know. The storm they've been forecasting has been upgraded to a potential blizzard, first major system of the season, coming in faster than expected. They're talking about road closures by tonight." Catherine glanced at the clock, nearly 6 p.m. already, and outside the clinic windows, the late October sky was darkening ominously fast. The first few snowflakes were beginning to swirl in the parking lot. "We'll need to transfer him, Doctor," Anderson said, reaching the same conclusion Catherine had. "The emergency veterinary hospital in Madison has the specialists and equipment he needs. We're not equipped for this level of critical care overnight. Madison is 3 hours away in good conditions," Sheriff Williams cautioned. "With this storm coming in—" "We don't have a choice," Catherine insisted. "He needs intensive care we can't provide here." The sheriff rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "I could arrange a police escort, get you through before the worst hits." "Thank you, Michael," Catherine said gratefully. "We'll need about 30 minutes to stabilize him for transport." As the sheriff left to make arrangements, Catherine went to update Sarah and Robert Mitchell. She found them exactly where she'd left them. Sarah now showing Mitchell something on her phone, pictures of Max from his military days that she'd found online. "He was so handsome," Sarah was saying, her finger tracing the image of the proud German shepherd in his tactical vest. "See how he's standing so tall next to your brother?" Mitchell nodded, his throat working as he swallowed hard. "Marcus used to say Max was the best partner he ever had. Better than most humans." Catherine cleared her throat gently, and both looked up. "We need to transfer Max to the specialist hospital in Madison," she explained. "His condition is very serious, and they have equipment we don't have here." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Is he going to die?" Catherine knelt in front of her daughter, taking her small hands. "I don't know, sweetheart. He's very sick, but we're going to do everything possible to help him." "I'm coming with you," Sarah declared immediately. "No, you're not." Catherine shook her head firmly. "There's a major storm coming. I need you safe at home with Mrs. Wilson. I've already called her, and she's on her way to pick you up. But, Mom, no arguments. Sarah, this is non-negotiable." Catherine's tone left no room for debate. "I promise to call you with updates." Sarah's lower lip trembled, but she nodded reluctantly. Mitchell, who had been silent during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. "I should be the one to go," he said, his voice rough. "He's still legally my dog, and—" he hesitated. "Marcus would want me to be there." Catherine studied him carefully. The Robert Mitchell standing before her was markedly different from the hostile man who had confronted them days earlier. His anger seemed to have drained away, replaced by a deep, aching grief. "All right," she agreed. "But we leave as soon as the transport is ready." Within the hour, Max had been carefully loaded into the clinic's emergency transport vehicle. Dr. Anderson would stay behind to handle any cases that came in, while Catherine would manage Max's care during the journey. Sheriff Williams had arranged for a deputy to lead them with lights and sirens, hopefully clearing a path through the increasingly treacherous roads. As they prepared to depart, Sarah stood in the parking lot with Mrs. Wilson, snow gathering on her wool hat and shoulders. Catherine hugged her tightly. "Be good for Mrs. Wilson. I'll call as soon as we reach Madison." "Save him, Mom," Sarah whispered fiercely. "Please." "I'll do my best," Catherine promised, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead before climbing into the passenger seat of the transport vehicle. Mitchell sat silently in the back beside Max's stretcher, one hand resting gently on the sedated dog's flank. The small convoy pulled out of the clinic parking lot into rapidly deteriorating conditions. What had started as light flurries just hours before was quickly becoming a proper snowstorm, with heavy wet flakes reducing visibility and accumulating on the roadways. The deputy's flashing lights created an eerie blue-red glow in the swirling white. 20 minutes into the journey, they hit their first major slowdown. A truck jackknifed on the highway, forcing them to detour onto county roads. Catherine checked Max's vitals obsessively, adjusting his fluids and monitoring his breathing, which seemed to grow more labored with each passing mile. "How much farther?" Mitchell asked from the back, his voice tight with concern. "At this rate, at least 2 more hours," Catherine answered grimly, watching the snow build up on the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. In the back, Max stirred restlessly, a soft whine escaping despite the sedation. Mitchell leaned closer, speaking softly to the dog in a tone Catherine had never heard from him before. "Easy, buddy. You're okay. You're going to be okay." His hand moved gently over Max's head, finding the spot behind his ears that all dogs love. "You remember when Marcus used to sing to you during thunderstorms? You never did like loud noises, unless they were gunfire. Weird. That Catherine pretended not to listen, giving Mitchell the privacy of this intimate moment, but she couldn't help noticing how Max seemed to settle under his touch. An hour later, conditions had deteriorated to near whiteout. Their driver, Tom, a former paramedic who volunteered at the clinic, gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles as he strained to follow the increasingly faint taillights of the deputy's cruiser ahead. "Doc," Tom said quietly, "I'm not sure we're going to make it to Madison tonight. This is getting dangerous." Catherine checked her phone, no service. The road ahead had disappeared into a wall of white, and the wind rocked the vehicle with increasing violence. "Tom's right," she acknowledged reluctantly. "We need to find shelter and continue when the storm passes." As if the weather had heard her surrender, the deputy's brake lights suddenly flared red ahead, and their radio crackled to life. "Transport, this is Deputy Clark. Highways closed ahead. Complete whiteout conditions reported. We need to turn back or find somewhere to wait this out." Catherine's heart sank. Turning back meant at least an hour to Oak Ridge in these conditions, and Max's vitals were becoming increasingly unstable. The German shepherd's breathing had developed an ominous rattle, and his heart rate was climbing despite the sedation. "There's a motel about 3 miles back," Tom suggested. "Nothing fancy, but they'll have power and heat." Catherine turned to check on Max again and was alarmed at what she saw. His gums had taken on a bluish tint, and his chest heaved with each labored breath. Mitchell noticed it too, his face paling. "Something's wrong," he said, fear evident in his voice. Catherine climbed into the back, stethoscope already in her ears. What she heard sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Max's lungs were filling with fluid pulmonary edema, a life-threatening complication. "We need to pull over now," she ordered. "I need to administer emergency medications." Tom guided the vehicle to the roadside as Catherine prepared injections with practiced efficiency. The deputy's cruiser pulled in behind them, its headlights creating a small island of visibility in the swirling snow. "What's happening?" Mitchell demanded, panic rising in his voice. "His heart is failing," Catherine explained tersely, pushing medications through Max's IV line. "The stress of transport may have been too much." Outside, the wind howled like a living thing, rattling the vehicle's windows as Catherine fought to stabilize the dying dog. Minutes stretched into an eternity as she worked, Mitchell watching with helpless horror. "Come on, Max," she murmured, administering another dose of medication. "Fight, soldier, fight." Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Max's breathing eased. His heart rate, which had been racing dangerously fast, began to steady. Catherine released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "He's stabilizing," she announced, relief washing over her. "But we can't continue to Madison tonight." "It's too risky." Deputy Clark appeared at the window, snow coating his uniform. "The Pine Lodge Motel is about a mile ahead. I've called ahead, they've got rooms, and they're expecting us." The next 20 minutes passed in tense silence as they crawled along the snow-covered road at a snail's pace. When the motel's neon sign finally glowed through the curtain of white, it seemed like a miracle. The motel owner, a burly man named Pete, met them at the entrance, holding the doors wide as they carefully transferred Max's stretcher inside. "Got you folks a ground-floor room with 2 beds," he said. leading them down a dimly lit hallway. "Power's still on, but I've got generators ready if it goes out." The room was basic but clean: 2 queen beds, a small table with chairs, a bathroom with a shower stall. They settled Max on one of the beds, the stretcher barely fitting in the confined space. "I need to call my daughter," Catherine said, but her phone still showed no service. "Is there a landline I can use?" Pete nodded. "Office phone. Come with me." Left alone with Max, Mitchell sat on the edge of the bed, his hand resting lightly on the dog's side, feeling each breath. In the harsh fluorescent light, Max looked smaller somehow, his once powerful frame wasted by neglect and disease. Mitchell's throat tightened with a complex mix of emotions: grief, guilt, anger, and beneath it all, a desperate hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words barely audible above the howling wind outside. "I'm so damn sorry. Max and Marcus, I failed you both." Max's eyes opened slightly at the sound of Mitchell's voice, cloudy with age and illness, but somehow still alert. With obvious effort, the old dog lifted his head an inch off the bed and weakly licked Mitchell's hand once before collapsing back, exhausted by even this small gesture. It was this scene that Catherine returned to Mitchell with his head bowed, tears falling unchecked onto the blanket, and Max's tail moving in the faintest suggestion of a wag. The storm raged on outside, trapping them in this unexpected moment of truth as Max fought for each breath, his life hanging by the thinnest of threads. The night stretched endlessly at the Pine Lodge Motel, marked by the howling wind outside and the labored breathing of the German shepherd on the bed. Catherine checked Max's vitals hourly, adjusting medications and fluids with the limited supplies they'd brought from the clinic. Each time his breathing faltered, her heart seemed to stop until the rhythm steadied again. Mitchell hadn't left Max's side, not even to eat the sandwiches Pete's wife had brought them. He sat in the uncomfortable chair beside the bed, occasionally dozing only to jerk awake at any change in Max's breathing. "You should rest," Catherine told him around 2 a.m. after she'd finished another round of medication. "Take the other bed. I'll watch him." Mitchell shook his head. "I abandoned him once. Won't do it again." Catherine settled into the chair on the opposite side of the bed, studying the man across from her. In the dim light, with his guard down, he looked remarkably like his brother. Marcus had been leaner, more disciplined, but they shared the same strong jawline, the same furrow between their brows when concerned. "You were close to Marcus?" she asked softly. Mitchell's gaze remained on Max. "Growing up, yeah. He was my kid brother. I looked out for him." A bitter smile twisted his lips. "Until I didn't." "What happened between you?" Mitchell was silent for so long Catherine thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I was supposed to deploy with him. Same unit. We'd planned it that way, watching each other's backs. Then I blew out my knee in training 3 weeks before deployment." He rubbed absently at his right leg. "They shipped him out without me. Last thing I said to him was that he'd be fine without his big brother babysitting him." The weight of those words, now irretrievable, hung in the air between them. "He knew you didn't mean it," Catherine offered. "Did he—" Mitchell's laugh held no humor. Last letter I got. He wrote that Max was a better battle buddy than I ever was. Said at least Max would never bail on him. He swallowed hard. Then he was gone. And they shipped me his dog like that made up for everything. And you couldn't bear to look at Max, Catherine realized. Because he reminded you of Marcus. Mitchell nodded once, sharply. Every time I saw those damn eyes looking at me, it was like being accused, like he was asking where I was when Marcus needed me. Outside, the wind had begun to die down, the storm's fury spent in the new quiet. Max's breathing seemed louder, each strained inhale a reminder of how precarious his hold on life remained. You know, Catherine said after a while, my husband was there. When Marcus died, Mitchell's head snapped up. William was there. She nodded, twisting the ring on her necklace. He wrote to me about it afterward, about how brave your brother was, how he and Max had saved 3 men that day before. Her voice trailed off, not wanting to speak the brutal details. Before the IED, Mitchell finished flatly. Before Marcus stepped where he shouldn't have, and got blown to hell. That's not how William told it, Catherine said softly. He said Marcus saw the secondary device that the others had missed. He pushed the men back and ordered Max to retreat. But there wasn't time for Marcus to get clear himself. Mitchell stared at her, his expression suddenly vulnerable. He knew what was going to happen. According to William, yes, your brother chose to save the others, including Max. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. William wrote that Marcus's last words were, "Get Max home." He was thinking of his dog even then. A sound escaped Mitchell, something between a groan and a sob. He covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking. On the bed between them, Max stirred, disturbed by the emotion radiating from his former handler's brother. With tremendous effort, the old dog lifted his head, whining softly. "It's okay, boy," Mitchell whispered, composing himself enough to stroke Max's graying muzzle. "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. As the night wore on, Max's condition deteriorated further. The medications that had stabilized him earlier were losing their effectiveness. His breathing grew more labored, his gums paler. Around 4 a.m., he began to tremble uncontrollably. "We're losing him," Catherine said, the professional mask slipping as exhaustion and emotion took their toll. "I don't have the equipment or medications he needs." Mitchell looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed but clear. "Tell me what to do. There must be something." Catherine shook her head helplessly. "We need a veterinary ICU, oxygen, cardiac monitoring, possibly mechanical ventilation. Without it—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The unspoken reality settled between them. Max was dying, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Mitchell stood suddenly, pacing the small room like a caged animal. No, I won't accept that. After everything he's been through, everything he survived in Afghanistan, he can't die in some cheap motel room because I was too messed up to take care of him properly." Catherine watched him, understanding the anger that comes with helplessness all too well. She'd felt it when the military officers had arrived at her door 3 years ago, when the doctors had told her there was nothing they could do, when she'd had to explain to Sarah that Daddy wasn't coming home. "Robert," she said gently, Sometimes all we can do is be there at the end, make sure they don't die alone. Something in her tone must have reached him, because Mitchell stopped pacing. He returned to the bedside and carefully, with infinite tenderness, gathered Max's frail body into his arms, cradling the German shepherd against his chest. "I've got you, buddy," he murmured, his voice breaking. "I'm here now. I'm not leaving." Max relaxed into Mitchell's embrace, his breathing still labored, but somehow less panicked. Catherine adjusted the IV line to ensure it wasn't kinked, then stepped back, giving them space for what might be their final moments together. Dawn came softly, gray light filtering through the thin motel curtains. The storm had passed, leaving an unnatural quiet in its wake. Max had survived the night, but just barely. His systems were failing one by one, his body too damaged by years of neglect to recover, despite Catherine's best efforts. Mitchell hadn't moved for hours, still holding Max, occasionally speaking to him in low-toned stories about Marcus, about their training days, about the life Max should have had after retirement. Catherine dozed fitfully in the chair, waking at each change in Max's breathing pattern. A knock at the door startled them both. Catherine rose stiffly to answer it, expecting Pete with news about the roads. Instead, she found Sheriff Williams, snow crusted on his uniform and exhaustion lining his face. "Catherine." He nodded, then looked past her to Mitchell and Max. His expression softened with understanding. "How is he?" "Not good," she replied simply. "We almost lost him in the night. The roads, plows have been out since 3 a.m. Main highway's passable now." The sheriff hesitated. "That's not why I'm here. Though, I've been trying to reach you since last night." Catherine's heart stuttered. "Sarah, is she?" "Sarah's fine," he assured her quickly. "She's the reason I'm here. Actually, after you left, she apparently made some calls, a lot of calls." "What do you mean?" The sheriff's weathered face broke into a tired smile. "You'd better come see for yourself." Catherine followed him outside, where the world had been transformed into a crystalline white landscape. In the motel parking lot sat a vehicle she hadn't expected, a state-of-the-art mobile veterinary intensive care unit, its engine idling, steam rising from its exhaust in the cold morning air. A woman in scrubs emerged from the unit, extending her hand. "Dr. Thompson, I'm Dr. Melissa Rivera, from the University of Wisconsin Veterinary School. Your daughter contacted our emergency department last night about a military working dog in critical condition." Catherine stared in disbelief. "Sarah did this. How?" "Apparently she called everyone she could think of, the university, veterans groups, the governor's office. When we heard about Max's service record and condition, we mobilized immediately." Dr. de Rivera gestured to the mobile unit. "We have everything we need to stabilize him for transport to our facility. Full ICU capabilities, surgical suite if needed." Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. "I don't understand. The university doesn't have a mobile unit like this." Dr. Rivera smiled. "It belongs to the Military Working Dog Foundation. They flew it in from Chicago last night and drove it up as soon as the roads were cleared. There are a lot of people invested in saving this dog. Dr. Thompson." For a moment, Catherine couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. All she could think was Sarah. My brilliant, stubborn, compassionate daughter. "He's inside," she managed finally. "But you should know. He may be too far gone." "Doctor," Rivera's expression grew serious. "We know it's a long shot, but if there's even a chance, we want to try. These dogs give everything for their country. The least we can do is give everything for them in return." Catherine led her back to the motel room, where Mitchell still sat cradling Max. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from resignation to confusion to the first fragile glimmer of hope as Catherine explained the situation. "You mean there's a chance?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "A chance," Dr. Rivera confirmed, already kneeling to examine Max. "But we need to move quickly." Mitchell looked down at Max, then back at the doctor. "Whatever he needs, whatever it costs, I'll find a way to pay for it." "That's already been taken care of," Sheriff Williams said from the doorway. "The fundraiser your daughter started has raised over $50,000 since last night. Donations are still coming in from all over the country." Mitchell shook his head in disbelief. "Why would people do that? For a dog they've never met?" "Because Max isn't just any dog," Catherine said softly. "He's a symbol of something we all want to believe in: loyalty, courage, the idea that those who serve deserve care when they come home broken." As the medical team carefully transferred Max to a stretcher, his eyes found Mitchell's, a silent communication passing between them. Mitchell leaned down, pressing his forehead briefly against Max's. "Fight, soldier," he whispered. "That's an order." They watched as Max was loaded into the mobile unit, tubes and monitors already being attached to his frail body. As the doors closed and the vehicle pulled away, Catherine wasn't sure if the old dog had enough strength left to fight. What she did know was that whatever happened next, Max would not die abandoned and alone in a backyard. He would die if that was his fate, surrounded by people who recognized his worth, who honored his service, who fought for him until the very end. And sometimes that made all the difference. The University of Wisconsin Veterinary Medical Teaching Hospital stood like a beacon of hope against the clear blue sky that had followed the storm. Its modern glass facade reflected the morning sunlight as Catherine, Mitchell, and Sheriff Williams arrived. Having followed the mobile unit through freshly plowed roads, the reception area bustled with activity. But Catherine barely noticed the curious glances directed their way as they were escorted to a private waiting room. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by occasional updates from Dr. Rivera's team. Max was in critical condition but stabilized. They were running comprehensive tests. Specialists were being consulted. Around noon, Catherine's phone finally reconnected to service, immediately buzzing with dozens of missed calls and messages. Sarah's texts appeared first, a stream of increasingly anxious questions about Max's condition. Catherine stepped into the hallway to call her daughter. "Mom," Sarah answered on the first ring. "Is Max okay? Did the special doctors get there in time?" Mrs. Wilson said. "Slow down, sweetheart," Catherine said, her voice gentle but tired. "Max is being treated by the university veterinary team. They're doing everything possible for him. But will he make it?" The question hung in the air, innocent and devastating in its directness. Catherine closed her eyes briefly. "I don't know yet. He's very sick, but he's fighting hard." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Mitchell is with you?" "Yes, he's here." Good. Max shouldn't be alone. Neither should Mr. Mitchell. The simple wisdom in her daughter's words caught Catherine off guard. Mom, there's something else. Something important. What is it? Mrs. Wilson took me to Mr. Mitchell's house to get some of Max's things, his bed and stuff. The police let us in. Sarah's voice dropped to a near whisper. Mom, Max has been digging a hole in the backyard. The same spot, over and over. Mr. Mitchell kept filling it in, but Max would dig it up again. Catherine frowned. What are you saying, Sarah? We looked in the hole. The excitement in her daughter's voice was palpable now. There's a metal box buried there. We didn't take it out because the police said we shouldn't touch anything. But, Mom, I think it's important. I think Max was trying to find it. Before Catherine could respond, Dr. Rivera appeared in the hallway, gesturing for her to return. Sarah, I have to go. The doctor needs to speak with us. Find out about the box. Mom, I think it might help Max. Catherine returned to the waiting room, where Dr. Rivera now stood before Mitchell and Sheriff Williams. The veterinarian's expression was grave, but not defeated. Max's condition is critical but stabilized, she began. The years of neglect have caused multiple system damage, cardiac, renal, hepatic. He's severely anemic and has advanced heartworm disease. Under normal circumstances, I would be having a very different conversation with you. Mitchell's face paled. But, Dr. Rivera continued, military working dogs aren't normal circumstances. Max has received the best training in the world, including physical conditioning that built extraordinary reserves, even after years of neglect. His baseline is simply stronger than most dogs. What are you saying, exactly? Catherine asked. I'm saying we have options, but they all involve significant risk. Max needs specialized treatment, blood transfusions, heartworm treatment, potentially kidney dialysis. The recovery would be lengthy and difficult, with no guarantees of success. Mitchell leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. Do whatever it takes. Money's not an issue. Dr. Rivera nodded. There's something else you should know. During our examination, we discovered an anomaly. Max has been microchipped, which is standard for military dogs, but he has a second, unofficial chip as well embedded in his collar. Sheriff Williams straightened. What kind of chip? A GPS tracker. Apparently, it's not military issue, it's civilian technology. Someone wanted to keep tabs on Max's whereabouts. The implications hung in the air. Mitchell's expression darkened. You think someone was tracking him at my place? Why? Catherine suddenly remembered Sarah's words. The box, she said. Sarah just told me Max has been digging in the same spot in your backyard repeatedly. She said there's a metal box buried there. Mitchell stared at her, realization dawning. Son of a bitch, he muttered. That's why he kept digging. I thought he was just, I don't know, stressed or something. I kept filling in the hole. Sheriff Williams was already on his phone. Jenkins, he barked to his deputy, I need you to go to the Mitchell property on Maple. There's allegedly a metal container buried in the backyard where the dog was digging. Secure it, but don't open it until I get there. As the sheriff stepped out to coordinate with his deputies, Catherine turned to Mitchell. What do you think it is? I have no idea, he admitted. But someone put a tracker on Max to find it. Must be important. Dr. Rivera cleared her throat. I don't mean to interrupt, but we need decisions about Max's treatment plan. Like I said, do everything, Mitchell repeated firmly. Mr. Mitchell, the veterinarian said gently, before we proceed, I want you to understand something. Even with the best care, Max may not recover fully. Given his age and condition, he might have weeks or months, not years. Are you prepared for that possibility? Mitchell was silent for a long moment. When Marcus died, he finally said, I wasn't there. I couldn't help him. I can help Max now. He looked up, his eyes clear and resolved. Whatever time he has left, I want it to be good. I want him to know he matters. Dr. Rivera nodded. That's all I needed to hear. We'll start treatment immediately. After she left, Mitchell turned to Catherine. I need to go with the sheriff. Find out what's in that box. I'll stay with Max, she assured him. He shouldn't be alone. 4 hours later, Catherine sat beside Max's bed in the ICU. The German Shepherd lay unconscious, connected to monitors and IV lines, an oxygen cannula in his nostrils. His chest rose and fell with mechanical regularity, each breath a small victory. Catherine had seen countless animals in similar situations throughout her career. But something about Max's quiet dignity, even in this vulnerable state, touched her deeply. She was dozing in the uncomfortable chair when her phone vibrated. It was Mitchell. Catherine. His voice sounded strange, strained. You need to come to the sheriff's office now. I can't leave Max, she protested. Trust me, Mitchell insisted. This can't wait. It's about William. Catherine's heart seemed to stop. William, my husband, just come, please. 30 minutes later, Catherine walked into the sheriff's office, where Mitchell, Sheriff Williams, and 2 state police officers waited. On the conference table sat an open metal box, water-stained but intact, and beside it, several plastic evidence bags containing what looked like notebooks, a flash drive, and photographs. What is this? She asked, her voice barely steady. What does it have to do with William? Sheriff Williams gestured for her to sit. Catherine, what we found in this box. It's complicated. It appears to be Marcus Mitchell's personal effects, things he wanted preserved if something happened to him. Then why was it buried in Robert's yard? Mitchell answered, his voice hollow. Because Marcus didn't trust the military postal system. According to his letter, he gestured to one of the evidence bags. He sent Max to me with specific instructions to locate the box, which he'd shipped separately to a buddy who buried it before I even got Max. I don't understand. Why all the secrecy? The state police officer, a serious woman in her 40s, spoke up. Mrs. Thompson, Staff Sergeant Mitchell was gathering evidence of potential war crimes committed by private military contractors in his area of operation. He documented illegal weapons sales, civilian casualties, bribes to local officials. Catherine shook her head, struggling to process this information. But what does this have to do with William? With my husband? Mitchell slid one of the evidence bags toward her. Inside was a letter, the paper creased from multiple foldings, the handwriting instantly, achingly familiar. William's handwriting. With trembling fingers, Catherine opened the bag and removed the letter. It was dated 2 weeks before William's death. Marcus, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. The information we've gathered about Helios Group's operations can't be trusted through official channels. Too many higher-ups are on their payroll. I'm sending parallel documentation through separate means. But if I don't make it back, you need to get this to the right people. Catherine has a cousin in the DOJ. Trust no one else with this. Memorize this address and destroy this letter. If something happens to both of us, Max knows what to do. That training we did wasn't just for show. Catherine looked up, her world tilting on its axis. William was involved in this. Sheriff Williams nodded grimly. From what we can piece together, Captain Thompson and Staff Sergeant Mitchell discovered that private contractors were selling weapons to local militia groups, the same groups that were attacking U.S. forces. They began gathering evidence, but apparently believed the chain of command was compromised. They trained Max to find the box, Mitchell added softly. If anything happened to them. But why bury it? Why not just deliver the evidence? The state police officer spoke again. The letter from Staff Sergeant Mitchell explains that after your husband was killed, he wasn't sure who to trust. He decided to send the evidence home with Max. But then his unit was ambushed. He believed it might have been deliberately orchestrated to silence them. Catherine's mind reeled. So when Max came to you, she turned to Mitchell. He was trying to complete his final mission. Mitchell finished, his voice breaking. And I was too drunk, too angry, too wrapped up in my own grief to notice. I just thought he was being destructive, digging holes in the yard. The full weight of the situation crashed down on Catherine. William and Marcus had discovered something dangerous enough to get them killed. They'd entrusted Max with ensuring the evidence reached the right people. And for 2 years, the loyal dog had tried to fulfill that mission while slowly dying from neglect. "My God," she whispered, "all this time." "There's more," Sheriff Williams said gently. According to Marcus's letter, Max was never supposed to go to Robert. He left explicit instructions that if anything happened to him, Max should go to your family, to you and Sarah. Catherine remembered Colonel Reeves's words at the clinic. The will. That's what was in the will. Mitchell nodded, his face ashen. Marcus knew I was in no state to care for a dog. He knew Max would be better with your family. But someone intervened, made sure Max came to me instead. Someone who wanted the evidence to stay buried, the state police officer added. Someone who knew about the box but couldn't find it without attracting attention. So they put a tracker on Max, Catherine realized, hoping he would lead them to it. The implications were staggering. William and Marcus had died trying to expose corruption. Max had spent 2 years trying to complete their mission while slowly dying, and all the while, unknown forces had been watching, waiting. "What happens now?" Catherine asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "The state police and FBI will take over the investigation," Sheriff Williams explained. "The evidence will be analyzed, and if it's as significant as it appears, there will likely be federal indictments." "And Max?" Mitchell asked, the question that mattered most to both of them. Sheriff Williams's weathered face softened. "Max has completed his mission. Now it's our turn to complete ours to make sure he's taken care of for whatever time he has left." Catherine stood, her decision made. "I need to get back to the hospital. Max shouldn't wake up alone." As she turned to leave, Mitchell called after her, "Catherine, Wait. He held out an envelope, water-stained but sealed. This was in the box, too. It's addressed to you and Sarah. From Marcus. Catherine took the envelope with trembling hands, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Whatever was written inside, she knew it would change everything again. Spring sunshine streamed through the windows of the Thompson living room, creating pools of golden light on the hardwood floor where Max lay stretched out, his coat glossy and full once more. 3 months had passed since that desperate night at the Pine Lodge Motel, 3 months of intensive veterinary care, slow recovery, and rebuilding of trust. Max lifted his head as Sarah entered the room, his tail thumping gently against the floor. Though his muzzle remained gray and his movements lacked the fluid grace of his younger years, the dullness had vanished from his eyes. In its place was a quiet alertness, an engaged presence that connected with everyone around him. "Ready for your walk, boy?" Sarah asked, already clipping the leash to his collar, a new one, soft leather with his name and the Thompson phone number engraved on a polished tag. No military hardware, no chains, just the simple identification of a beloved family pet. Catherine watched from the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand, as her daughter helped the German Shepherd to his feet. Max's recovery had defied the most optimistic projections. The specialists had warned them that damage to his kidneys and heart might be permanent, that the heartworm treatment alone could prove fatal to a dog in his weakened state. Yet, day by day, Max had fought his way back, first standing on his own, then walking short distances, eventually regaining enough strength to climb the porch steps unassisted. "We won't go far," Sarah promised, seeing her mother's watchful gaze. "Just to the corner and back. Dr. Rivera said short walks are good for him." "Take your phone," Catherine reminded her, "and be back in 20 minutes. Mr. Mitchell will be here soon." As Sarah and Max made their careful way down the front path, Catherine returned to the kitchen where Marcus Mitchell's letter lay open on the table. She had read it countless times since that day at the sheriff's office, each reading revealing new layers of meaning, new connections between past and present. Catherine and Sarah, if you're reading this, things didn't go as planned. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for a lot of things. Max has been my partner, my protector, and my closest friend for 8 years. We've seen the worst humanity has to offer, and some of the best, too. He deserves better than what the military retirement system will give him. We spoke of you often, of your kindness, your strength, your love of animals. He showed me pictures of Sarah growing up alongside your family dogs. I knew then who should care for Max if I couldn't. He's more than just a military working dog. He's smart, scary, smart sometimes, loyal beyond reason, stubborn when it matters. He'll protect Sarah with his life, just as he protected me. He loves water, but hates thunderstorms. He prefers the left side of the bed. He'll follow you around the house like a shadow until he's sure you're safe. I've made arrangements with my contact at K9 Veteran Support to help with his transition and any medical needs. The paperwork is included with this letter. One last thing, Will wanted you to know that everything he did was to make the world safer for Sarah. Everything. Me too. Take care of my boy. And maybe, sometimes, tell him his old handler misses him. Marcus. The letter had answered questions Catherine hadn't even known to ask. After William's death, she had received the standard military explanations: ambush, firefight, heroic last stand. She had accepted the folded flag at his funeral, endured the rifle salute, and returned to Oak Ridge to rebuild a life for herself and Sarah. Never had she imagined that William had died trying to expose corruption, that his death might not have been the random tragedy of war, but something more deliberate. The FBI investigation was still ongoing, the full truth yet to emerge. But Catherine had learned enough to understand that both William and Marcus had died as they lived with honor, protecting others. The doorbell rang, pulling Catherine from her thoughts. Robert Mitchell stood on the porch, clean-shaven and clear-eyed, looking more like the soldier he had once been than the bitter recluse of Maple Street. "Morning, Catherine," he said, accepting the coffee she offered. "Sarah and Max already out. Just around the block. They'll be back soon." She gestured to the chair across from hers. "How's the new job going?" Mitchell nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "Good. Really good. Actually, the VA outreach program needed someone who understands what it's like. Coming back different." He didn't need to elaborate. They both knew he meant coming back broken, haunted, lost. In the aftermath of Max's rescue and the discovery of the buried evidence, Mitchell had found himself at a crossroads. The media coverage had brought unwanted attention, but also unexpected support. Fellow veterans recognized his struggle with PTSD and survivor's guilt. The local VA had offered him a position working with returning service members, using his experience to help others avoid his mistakes. "And the house?" Catherine asked. "Sold last week. Closings next month." Mitchell glanced around the Thompson living room with its comfortable furniture and family photos. "Found a smaller place closer to the VA office. Has a fenced yard. Though," he cleared his throat, "for when Max visits." The custody arrangement had evolved naturally over the past months. As Max recovered at the university hospital, both Catherine and Mitchell had been constant presences. When the time came to discharge him, no one had questioned that the Thompsons' home would be his primary residence, with Mitchell visiting regularly and occasionally taking Max for overnight stays once his health stabilized. The front door opened, and Sarah led Max inside, carefully removing his leash and harness. "Mr. Mitchell," she exclaimed, her face lighting up. "We saw Mrs. Peterson with her new puppy. Max was so patient with it, even when it kept jumping on him." Mitchell smiled, kneeling to greet the German shepherd who approached him with dignified affection. "That right, Buddy making friends in the neighborhood." He ran his hand over Max's head, checking the small bald patch where IV lines had once been a habit from the early days of recovery that had become a ritual of reassurance. "He's looking good," Mitchell said, his voice thick with emotion. "Strong. Dr. Rivera says he's defying all expectations," Catherine confirmed. His last checkup showed continued improvement in kidney function, and the heartworm treatment was completely successful. What she didn't say, what they all understood, was that Max's recovery remained something of a miracle. A dog his age, after such prolonged neglect, should not have survived. Yet here he was, soaking up the spring sunshine, accepting treats from Sarah with gentle courtesy, moving between Catherine and Mitchell with equal affection. "Are we still going to the ceremony tomorrow?" Sarah asked, settling on the floor beside Max. Mitchell nodded. "Everything's arranged. The mayor will present the award at noon. There'll be press there, though we can handle it, Catherine assured him. Max deserves to be recognized. The ceremony had been the town council's idea, a way to heal the divisions that had erupted during the controversy over Max's rescue. The Oak Ridge Citizen of Honor Award had never been given to a dog before, but as the full story emerged of Max's military service and his final mission to deliver critical evidence, public opinion had united behind the recognition. Sarah leaned against Max's side, her small hand buried in his thick fur. "Do you think Dad and Mr. Marcus would be proud of what we did for Max?" Mitchell's eyes met Catherine's over the child's head, a wealth of shared understanding passing between them. "I know they would be," Mitchell answered softly. "They'd be proud of all of us, especially Max." Max, as if understanding he was the topic of conversation, raised his head and looked between them with calm, intelligent eyes. Then he sighed contentedly and rested his chin on Sarah's knee, the picture of peaceful security. In that moment, Catherine saw the truth with perfect clarity. Max had never completed just one mission, he had completed many. He had served his country with valor. He had fulfilled Marcus's final request to deliver the evidence. He had brought healing to Robert Mitchell's broken spirit. He had given Sarah a connection to the father she had lost. And perhaps most remarkably, he had created a family from the fragments of loss different than before, unexpected in its composition, but a family nonetheless. Outside, spring flowers bloomed in the garden William had once tended. Inside, his daughter laughed as she showed Mitchell the new tricks she'd taught Max. And Catherine, watching them, felt for the first time in years the weight of grief lifting, replaced by something lighter, brighter, hope, not just for tomorrow, but for all the tomorrows yet to come. This story of Max, a retired military dog who gave 8 years of loyal service only to face neglect and abandonment, strikes at the heart of what many of us fear most: being forgotten after a lifetime of service and sacrifice. Like Max, many of us wonder if our contributions matter, if anyone would fight for us when we can no longer fight for ourselves. But this story reminds us that valor and loyalty never truly fade, even when the body grows weak. It shows us that second chances exist, that it's never too late for healing, for connection, for family. In Sarah's determination, we see the pure-hearted advocacy our grandchildren can provide. In Catherine's compassion, we recognize the quiet strength that holds communities together. And in Robert Mitchell's journey from bitter isolation to redemption, we find hope for our own unresolved regrets and losses. Max's story speaks to everyone who has served, everyone who has loved and lost, everyone who wonders if they still have purpose in their sunset years. It affirms that our lives, like Max's, can find new meaning when we least expect it, and that the bonds we forge in our final chapters may be the most beautiful of all.